If you want to turn your artwork into embroidery files that you can sew out on your embroidery machine, I can help you with that. When I set up my business, the first thing I wanted to do was see my own designs stitched out. I had loads of artwork that I wanted to turn into embroidery patches, and there were two ways I could do this. The first way was to send my design to a company and they would digitize the picture for me. Depending on the size of the design and the level of detail involved, I could expect to pay between £12 to £95 per design. The digitizer would then make any edits to the design for me, such as resizing it if I needed, for a fee. The second way was to purchase my own digitizing software and do the digitizing work myself. I opted for option 2 because I knew I wanted to make lots of different designs, and it was a skill that I thought would be handy to learn if I was going to embroider bespoke logos and artwork for customers. The digitizing software I purchased was called Embird. In 2016, it cost me about £300 to buy. It's one of the cheaper digitizing softwares on the market. It meets my needs, but there are other softwares available, and I would recommend doing your own research on all the software out there before investing. In this video, I'm going to share with you some tricks I've picked up to improve my digitizing alongside some of the day-to-day running of my business. This isn't a tutorial as such, but if you would like to see a more detailed digitizing tutorial, I have made one and I will leave a link to that in the description below. After watching this video, if you like the content or find it helpful, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you would like to keep up with my latest embroidery tips and product reviews, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I've already uploaded my image into Embird, and you might have seen it's a photo of some sardines in a tin. I don't know if I'm the only one noticing this, but sardines have been so popular lately. I doodled this picture months ago and then out of nowhere started seeing loads of people selling sardines or canned fish related things like earrings and t-shirts. So today we're digitizing a tin of sardines. Digitizing can be intimidating, especially if your first few attempts don't go the way you plan. But it's just tracing with stitch types, and different stitches give you different effects. I'm going to try and deliver my tips in time with the video, but some of it might not quite match with what's happening on screen. But all of these tips can be applied to digitizing in general. This isn't exclusive to Embird software. In embroidery, there are 4 things we want to avoid: gapping, distortion, very dense overlapping, and puckering. Some of those issues come down to stabilization, but they're also preventable by proper digitizing as well. You build an embroidery design out of objects. Each object can be assigned a particular colour, and they behave a lot like layers in Photoshop in the sense that you can stack objects on top of one another. And then you also have the option to rearrange the order these objects are in if needed. How you build up your image is relevant. For me, I usually like to start at the back of the image and work forward when I'm working on a tubular embroidery design. So if we look at that image of the sardines again, I'll show you what I mean. I started at the back of the image with the brown stuff, I guess the brine first. I digitize each section of the brine individually. I don't just make a large brown rectangle to go underneath the fish, because as you can see, when I start to digitize the fish, there's going to be silver, then there's going to be the yellow of the eye, and then there's going to be the dark grey outline and a few silver scales. All those elements of the embroidery will be objects, and they will all be stacked up on top of each other. So the stitches would all be stitched on top of each other, and that would make the embroidery very dense, leading to distortion and gapping, and we want to avoid that. It's easy enough to digitize around the fish, but when there is a colour in the centre of an object, for example, the silver fish body surrounds that yellow eye, then using a tool called the cutout tool in Embird, you select that object and then you just draw around the object that you want to, the shape that you want to cut out within that shape, and doing so cuts a hole in the design. And then I can then fill that hole with the yellow colour, knowing now that I am not stacking my stitches on top of one another. That yellow eye will be stitched directly onto the material underneath and not on top of embroidery stitches. Why I do this is because it will make the design less dense, and the less dense the design is, then there won't be as much pull and strain on the material. If all the stitches are in one place, if you can imagine it, it kind of hugs the material together, and it's things like that that lead to gapping and puckering. So this is how you avoid that, by making your designs as less dense as possible. There will be times where sometimes you do have to lay stitches on top of stitches. Try to avoid doing it as much as you can, but sometimes it is unavoidable. And when that happens, you can sometimes find, particularly in fill stitches, where the colour underneath shows through the colour on top, and a lot of times you don't want that to happen. In case you're struggling to visualize what I mean, I've done a little illustration here. Sorry, the video quality isn't that great, but I imagine this green is a fill stitch being stitched out at 90 degrees. And then for whatever reason you want to overlay another fill object on top, and you also stitch that out at a 90-degree angle, you will see that because the stitches are both running in the same direction, then parts of the green underneath will start showing through the blue. And the way to prevent that is by making sure that you change the stitch angle of the object being layered on top. Usually I only do this when I'm stitching in a very small scale embroidery. In my sardine image, which you see here, an example of this where I wouldn't do a cutout would be in the fish's pupil. I would, because I know it's going to be quite small, making a cutout in such a small object would be problematic, and so it's best to just embroider over it. Using alternating stitch angles is also very handy for stopping gapping and distortion in your design as well. If all of your stitches were running in one direction, then the material would get pulled in that direction. Whereas if you use alternating stitch angles for your fill objects, it evens out the stretch of the material. Another key tip in embroidery to increase the efficiency of your design is to reduce trims wherever possible. And I do this by connecting objects of the same colour. I really like the connect tool in Embird, because it gives you a lot of manual control over the route the connection stitches take. This design took me about 40 minutes to digitize, and I do have the whole thing recorded. If you would like me to do like a much slower version of this video where I go through everything I've done step by step rather than like this sped up speed run of the digitizing process, then please let me know down in the comments and I will do that for a future video. And if all else fails and you're still getting gaps between the objects of your embroidery designs, then the last thing I want to draw your attention to is pull compensation. Around the edge of your fill stitch or satin stitches, pull compensation adjusts the stitch length to make it a little bit longer, to kind of knit together with the object next to it. If your material has been pulled around a lot by the stitching process, then pull compensation helps to compensate for that. So in summary, my top tips would be: adjust your pull compensation, increase it for all objects to ensure they knit together. Connect as many objects of the same colour as you can to reduce trims. Use alternating stitch angles to ensure an even stretch of the material. and avoid overlaying stitches as much as possible. I finished digitizing the rest of the design off screen because, like I said, that video ended up being 40 minutes long, and now I'm going to stitch out the completed design on my Happy Japan embroidery machine. I like to transfer my designs onto Happy Japan via a USB stick, and the design, once I've uploaded it onto the machine, it automatically saves to the machine memory. I think the machine can hold something like 999 designs, so it's got a big memory bank. And then I just select the colours that are appropriate for my design. I assign a matching colour to each needle and then match that needle number with the objects within the design. I embroider my designs onto craft felt. I like felt because it's quite a stable material with not a lot of stretch in it, and I'm going to be using 2 layers of a medium weight tearaway stabilizer under the felt. When the design is complete, I remove it from the embroidery hoop, tear away the backing from the back. This is why I like to use tearaway backing, because it gives a really neat finish around the embroidery. And then I cut the design out by hand with the scissors. I do also have a laser machine for doing this, which I use if I'm cutting out a lot of the same patches at once, or if you are embroidering on a cotton drill, I think you can use a heat knife, and that also gives you a really close finish around the edge of your patch. Because I will be turning this into a patch, I am going to be adding iron-on back into it, but this video was just to show you the design process. Adding iron-on back in is the final step. But this is the completed product. Not bad for a first attempt. There are a few things I'm going to change, but on the whole I achieved what I wanted to achieve, and it does look like the artwork. If you have any questions about the digitizing process, then leave a comment in the comment section below and I will answer it in that longer video I was talking about making. But that's all for now. Please remember to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching my video. Bye bye.